Okay, recording. Cool. So yeah, I wanted to get this group together. Eli, you and I actually haven't met, but it was my understanding that you're working on improved usage metrics, and I want to make sure I was disambiguating for my team. We tend to use the word usage ping exclusively to talk about usage metrics, but there's some disambiguation we should do. But mostly I wanted to get to the meat of what are the types of things we'd love to measure in our combined stages, which is configure, monitor, and secure, and make sure that we had a sync with you to discuss those. And then my understanding is you're working to then go see if we can get that data from GitLab.com's data sources. Sound like a good agenda?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, so let's start with this disambiguation, because we even had this a little bit on the product call, I think today, yeah, that there's a current set of data that we get from both GitLab.com and self-managed instances called usage ping. It's a pretty dumb single increment counter, as I understand it, that just adds a counter to a table and then gets shipped to us once monthly. But we all recognize that that is not sufficient. There's some improvements to the structure of that data, but the broader improvement is that we are going to have some other data source, hopefully similar to the data sources we have on .com for self-managed metrics in the future. And so there's kind of this pre-effort to say, hey, let's look at the types of metrics we get from .com and see if we can reconfigure what we want the SMAU to be for each one of these stages, so that when we get access to those improved metrics through whether it's Pendio or Pendo or some other instance on self-managed, that we can have this new definition of SMAU available and working. Did I capture that correctly, Eli?
Yeah, so we've been working on the manage stage first, just as sort of a trial or a run through, and we limited that in scope just to GitLab.com, just because we had access to backend and front-end data, and that's pretty much what we've done. So we took the SMAU definition. I worked with Jeremy to kind of turn the definition into actual queries, and then some of it's only possible on the back end using the Postgres queries, and then some of it's only possible on the front end using Snowplow. And then combining those together, we're coming together with like a full stage dashboard. So yeah, I think it's a bit unclear how well this will scale to self-hosted. I mean, Snowplow wouldn't be a problem on the front end. Like, it should be the exact same either way, but right now for GitLab.com, we're just like ETLing the database that we're hosting and putting that into our warehouse. We obviously can't do that for self-hosted instances, so I'm not sure if that's going to be part of usage ping still, where we have to make queries and send it in combination with Snowplow. That part seems up in the air, but it's tricky from my perspective. Like, on the data team, we're not really responsible for data collection. Like, our sort of handoff point is maybe a bit further downstream than it would be in other companies. So I'm not exactly sure what the status of data collection is, but I think it's some sort of combination of Snowplow and usage ping still.
Okay, and can I just clarify, you use the terms front end and back end. Is that those better terms for me to use than something akin to Snowplow and something akin to usage ping? When you say back end, you mean usage ping, and when you say front end in current world, you're saying Snowplow?
Yeah, I think usage ping, I wouldn't use those terms, because usage ping still might encompass front end somehow, where like they would compile all the front end events and then send them out from the instance with usage ping. That would be one design pattern. So I think maybe front end, back end is a better way to keep those separate.
Okay, can you then disambiguate the two terms for me? What do you mean by each?
So I was just going to add there that we measure a lot of the front end stuff with the usage ping, and we did that for a long time because it was the only mechanism that we had. So, for example, when you install a Kubernetes application, the only way to do that is through the GUI, right? And that's all a front end process, right? That you go on the page and you have to click a button and stuff like that. So that's the usage ping measuring a front-end interaction. So I think that we'll see the same for both. And then by that same vein, I think that Snowplow can track clicks too. So I think that for .com, maybe that's more appropriate. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and so I'm just trying to disambiguate between front end and back end, and you're saying it's about the interaction. So user clicks merge when pipeline succeeds. That's a front end action, and what's the back end action? What's an analogous back end action?
Yeah, there's some overlap, but backend would be anything that creates a record in the backend database. So a project gets created through the API. We wouldn't have any front end tracking for that, but we would see a project was created on the backend.
Oh, okay. So that's how they perform an action?
Um,
I'm trying to think of, if I had two data sources, would I need one for create a project that was front end?
Well, it seems like there's potential duplicates sometimes, because if I choose to create a project through the web interface, I have a front end tracker and a back end tracker for create project. But then if I do it through the API, there's only a back end tracker. So if you take the number of back end actions minus the number of front end actions, you can figure out how many people did the action through a non-GUI interface versus the GUI interface, whereas the back end is a completed request.
Yeah, and so we're 8 minutes in. I don't want to spend the whole time debating. So maybe, Eli, if there's some you said the words front end and back end, and so I'm attaching to them. If I'm over rotating on them, we can move on. If there's some reference to how the data team thinks about those two terms, I would love it. Okay, so, but it sounds like in general, we are working towards a goal where we have more robust both front end and back end data. And there's an effort you're doing with Manage to kind of like precede us having more robust data from self-managed instances by using data sources available on .com.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I was directed that this would be a good exercise for my team to do with you. You can also respond and be like, actually, I'm overloaded enough with Manage. Let's let that play out before we start talking about these other stages that this team is representing. But I think what the request of me was to work with my team with you, do that same exercise that you're doing with Manage for monitor, configure, and secure. If that's not appropriate to do right now, that I can respond with that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good exercise. I think like the tricky part, and this is a big project to do like a dashboard for every single stage, and I think like the hardest part for me is like being new to this company and like the product, and there's this huge gap between product and data, and it's like product defined what they think SMAU is, and then it's like this handover process to data where data has to build the dashboard, and there's just a ton of domain knowledge in that gap where it was like, I'm not really sure what they mean by this, and then instead of just one stakeholder, there's like 8 or 10 different stakeholders for each stage. So it was like tricky for me to figure out like what do they mean when they say this or this or this. So I think just having like a face to put to each stage, that's helpful. In full transparency, like I'm supporting the growth team and I've just been helping out with the product stuff. So it's not my number one priority. I'm trying to, focus on the growth stuff when possible. And we've been seeing if the data team can get more support for like a product data analyst would be a role they'd want to fill eventually, which would be separate from growth. But in the meantime, growth is stepping in to help with these. I think, so like I've seen all these SMAU issues. So we're dealing with configure, monitor, secure. I think they probably stalled out a little bit just because, like I was saying, like it was hard for me to be actionable on them. So I was kind of just working on the manage one first, which was the plan. But I think now that the manage one is wrapped up, I shared it in the Zoom chat there if you have Periscope access. But now that that one's wrapped up, I think we're going to start planning to build out the other ones. So I appreciate you reaching out and getting the head start. But yeah, even just looking through these issues, there's a lot that I just probably going to need to comment on the issue or set up like individual chats to talk over like, how do we turn this definition into a query? And it goes the other way too, like product doesn't know what data has and data doesn't understand what product has. So there's just like a bit of a gap there.
Yeah, and I'll see like, I don't know if you call it increased urgency on my part, but we are, I'll speak for the team, I feel like we're flying a little blind when it comes to usage data. And so it would be great to have additional insight into the actual usage of our product. I would argue that secure is the place where I would want to know the most, because it seems like the place where we have the kind of hardest questions to answer that are obviously heavily revenue impacting. But then I also know that secure, we don't have as many secure users on .com, so that might not be one we want to prioritize. I would prioritize it as secure configure monitor if you're considering taking them one at a time through the process. I don't know if that is helpful. And then, yeah, if it's more appropriate for us to have you then follow up individually with the assigned PMs on those issues, that works for me.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay, so I'm gonna restack them, all the like defined SMAU ones, in what I consider the priority order to be for my teams. And then defend is the last one that I'll put farther down. I guess you've already got these other ones underway. Are you already doing this with create, verify, package, and release?
No, just,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well then maybe team, what do you think is a helpful next step? Would it be good to go over the dashboards created for manage as a kind of like pre-seed for our future conversation with Eli?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. I will.
Doesn't have to be, I mean, the dashboard looks fairly self-explanatory, but it would be helpful to know if we walk through how you guys put together the queries. Maybe we can do some of that legwork up front and reduce the load on you. I have some SQL background. I don't know about Daniel and Nicole, but whatever we can do to help you, let us know.
Yeah, maybe it would be helpful. Like, I know, Daniel, you've done some overviews with Sarah and others about this. GitLab data source is usage ping, but understanding how we created these charts for the snowplow source data might be a good start. And Eli, would it be better if you drive, or I'm happy to point and click if you tell me where to point and click.
Yeah, I can screen share.
Okay.
Just gonna look through, make sure I have the right issues up. And
I was thinking of this dashboard that you shared in chat.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, you can see my screen now. Cool. Yeah, so we started from this one. So Jeremy made this ticket. He had just for managed SMAU definitions, he broke it into 9 different things. So these are called categories, I guess. And so basically, this was the starting point that he gave me, and I was trying to turn those all into queries. So I ended up with, sorry, I had too many issues open. So I turned it into a table, and I was just trying to figure out it would basically fall into 3 different areas: captured on the back end, captured in Snowplow, and then not captured at all. And that's kind of, I think, what would cause the most delays. And then we had the discussion about backend versus front end. I think I can explain that better, but if it's in, yeah, there's overlap there, but I can figure out which is the best source there. So I basically try to turn these definitions into queries, so I ended up having 2 in the front, 2 in the back end, which is GitLab.com databases, and 4 on the front end. And I guess like the missing step here is the end goal is to have one combined SMAU number, right, with the back end and the front end union together, basically saying how many unique users did we have in this time period. And the missing step there right now is that the Snowplow events don't have a user ID attached to them. So we can't actually join the Snowplow events back to user ID, back to GitLab.com users. So there's still some like work in progress about turning that tracking on. But like, for example, you said secure was the highest priority. I think like, so Snowplow tracks page views and clicks automatically. That's the nice thing about it. Like you don't have to manually define every single event. So in theory, like we shouldn't have to do any additional custom tracking, but for some of these, it's like difficult.
Quick question.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
When we're tracking user clicks on the front end, when somebody is interacting with a page, are we capturing this based on the HTML structure of the page, like what divs they're interacting with? And if so, if it doesn't have a unique identifier attached to it, there could be multiple of those on a page. Do you have insight into that?
Yeah, so Snowplow, I can show you what a Snowplow event looks like right now.
Yeah, and like I think that first one is probably a great example of what Sarah's talking about. This is just a section on a merge request that includes the security reports, and we'd want to know if somebody expanded it.
Okay, so should I open a merge request and see what it looks like?
Yeah, which like I guess anything in CE should have security reports on it.
It seems hit or miss depending what it is, but yeah, CE will probably have it.
Okay, like, so what a Snowplow event looks like right now. I have to create one, but it's just, so this is what a page view looks like. What I was saying about, so it has all the information. Oh, I should do a click rather than a page view. So it would look like this is a click event.
This is a great question. Okay, so stay right there.
Mm-hmm.
Within that drop down, you've got your groups and explore groups.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 different options in that list on the left-hand side.
Yep.
Does an event come up differently if you click on your groups versus explore groups? Because those to me are going to be kind of the same quote unquote section within that page structure. And the answer might be yes, and I might be digging us in too deep. I'm just curious if we are tracking those as unique events.
Yeah, I think
in this case, clicking on one of those leads to a page view though, so that might not be the best example, but it might be more like when you're filtering and you choose between last created and something else, would you have an identifier that said which one of those filters you chose?
Yeah, okay, yes.
Yeah, I think it's all based off the CSS. So my instinct is yes, but I might be confusing Pendo and Snowplow now because that was part of the Pendo demos as well. But yeah, my understanding is it's all CSS and it should be able to see all those diffs. like just the text of it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
But I can confirm later on. But yeah, what I was saying about user IDs, right now it's just this one, which is coming from Snowplow, and it's based off of cookies. So if I clear out my cookies or if I switch browsers, it's not going to know that I'm the same user. So that's kind of a blocker for this right now, but there's a ongoing issue and debate about that, whether we should be turning user ID on there. And then we can actually, because this way we'd be counting the user twice, right? Once on the back end, once on the front end, because we don't know that they're the same user. So the goal is to have like their GitLab user ID here as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but then that gets weird because then suddenly all the snowplow data is potentially impacted by all sorts of compliance things.
Yep.
Okay, so you went through the process of kind of how you created those dashboards. In the couple of minutes we have left, it sounds like Sarah was at least interested in knowing the basics of when I'm looking at Periscope, how do I select and then drill down into a snowplow data source? Could you maybe show us that real quick? So in those managed dashboard that you showed, there were some audit events or other things that were based on snowplow data.
Okay.
Is that something that Sarah could self-service to say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm interested in this specific event, and maybe can you show her the basics of getting started there?
Yep. So with the basic Periscope permissions, you should be able to explore all this yourself. So I would say, you say new chart, you go select. So the table is gonna be called analytics dot snowplow page views. And so yeah, they're divided in between page views and clicks. Everyone in Periscope should have full permissions here. And then it's going to have like 100 different columns. And I could open up permissions on what I was doing with manage, but basically we have documentation here as well in DBT docs. So it's going to give you some information about like what each column actually is. But yeah, we're going to have, every column you can need here. The scrolling's not working, but.
Okay, but we can reference those docs to find out those specific, there you go. The URL paths would be the ones we'd want. Cool. So
is there like
view the monitor dashboard, there might be one for Flash monitor.
Is there like a cheat sheet of the data? Because like there's 100 different things in the data. So is there like, these are the 2 or 3 sources we recommend using, or?
Yeah, I think like this is the closest we have to documenting our data warehouse. So I can share that in the Zoom link. But so from here, you could go down to, in models, you could go to Snowflake. Sorry, I'm going to the wrong one. But you could search Snowplow, and then we have some documentation about which tables we have. But we don't have like a list of like, here's the ones you should use. But I mean, Snowplow page views would be probably just one of the 2 you would want.
Yeah, page view sounds like a good place to start.
Yeah, and then there's some column level descriptions as well.
And so maybe just to close, thank you, Eli, this has been super helpful. Maybe just to close for the team, I guess what I'm hearing is there is an effort to evaluate other data sources. It may or may not be Snowplow, but it's, I think, valuable for us as a product team to start getting a sense of the data that we get from .com, because hopefully we're going to have data like that from self-managed instances in the future. And to the extent that we can kind of pre-refine what we think is important for SMAU and what you think is important as a product manager for knowing how your product usage is moving forward, we can work with Eli to create those dashboards. I know, Daniel, especially having been here for a while, we've kind of consistently said, hey, if we can't get the data for self-managed, it's really not valuable. I don't disagree that in terms of making broad-based product decisions, but in terms of getting a sense of the types of data we could get is what I think of this exercise for, as kind of like preceding for when we have data on self-managed instances, not necessarily that you would use that data to make product direction decisions. That makes sense, everybody?
That makes sense.
Okay. Cool. I think we're over time. Again, Eli, I appreciate it. I know we kind of threw you in here, but it was super helpful for me. And then, yeah, if you have a queue, then I guess next up is Nicole, and you can work with her directly on creating dashboards.
Okay, yeah, my timeline right now is to finish up the managed one, and then after that, I can start prioritizing what's next.
Cool.
Thank you, Eli.
Right.
Yeah, nice to meet you all.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
See you.